Everything you believe will last will not. Everything you cling to will slip through your fingers. Everything you construct will crumble. Everything you identify with will eventually dissolve. This is not pessimism. This is reality. But here is what most people never discover. In that dissolution, something permanent emerges. In the breaking apart of all your certainties, in the shattering of all your constructed identities, in the complete annihilation of everything you thought made you you, something indestructible is revealed. And that something is what you actually are. In this 13-minute exploration, we examine the paradox at the heart of transformation, dissolution and permanence existing simultaneously. We explore what dies and what persists. We discover that the path to lasting peace is not through building stronger defenses, but through allowing everything to fall away. If you are ready to understand what cannot be lost because it was never possessed, subscribe. Let's begin. Look around your life. Look at what you have built, your relationships, your achievements, your possessions, your identity. Now understand, all of it will dissolve, not eventually, now, in every moment. Your relationships are dissolving. People change, people leave, people die. Your achievements are being forgotten. The thing you accomplished 10 years ago that seemed so important is now invisible. Your possessions are deteriorating. Everything physical decays. Your identity is fragmenting. The self you believe you are is not the same self you were 5 years ago, 5 days ago, 5 minutes ago. The universe is not designed for permanence. The universe is designed for transformation. And yet, we spend our entire lives trying to freeze things, trying to make permanent what is inherently impermanent, trying to hold on to what is inherently flowing. This is the root of suffering. When you understand that everything is dissolving, you can stop fighting the dissolution. You can stop clinging to what cannot be held. And in that stopping, something shifts. When everything falls away, what actually dies? Not your consciousness, not your being, not your capacity to love or perceive or create. What dies is your story about yourself, the narrative identity you have constructed, the person you believe yourself to be. Think about this carefully. The you that you identify with most strongly, your personality, your history, your beliefs about yourself, your sense of being a separate individual, all of this is a story that feels absolutely real because you have been telling it to yourself constantly. But it is a story nonetheless. And in moments of genuine dissolution, in loss, in grief, in complete disorientation, that story breaks down. The narrative coherence shatters, and you are left in a state where you cannot tell yourself who you are. This is terrifying, because without the story, who are you? But this terror contains the seed of liberation, because what emerges when the story dissolves is not nothing. What emerges is your actual self, not the constructed identity, but the consciousness that observes the identity. Not the person you believe you are, but the awareness that knows the person. Here is the paradox that the ancient teachers understood. In the midst of complete dissolution, something permanent is revealed. It is not a thing. It is not something you can grasp or possess. But it is absolutely present. It is the awareness itself, the consciousness that witnesses everything arising and passing away. Notice something. No matter how much you change, no matter how your beliefs transform, how your body ages, how your circumstances shift, there is something that remains constant, something that witnesses all the change, something that is aware of the dissolution. That awareness is not personal. It is not your awareness in the sense that you possess it. It is universal awareness temporarily localized through your particular form. And this awareness cannot dissolve, because it is not a thing that can dissolve. It is the ground from which all things arise. The spiritual teachers call this the witnessing self, or the true self, or simply presence. Different traditions use different names, but they are all pointing to the same reality. The consciousness that is aware of everything arising and passing away is itself untouched by the arising and passing away. Most of what you defend yourself against is the reality of dissolution. You defend against change. You defend against loss. You defend against the impermanence of everything you love. But the defense itself creates suffering, because you are trying to freeze something that is designed to flow. You are trying to hold on to something that is designed to move. You are trying to make permanent something that is designed to transform. When you finally stop defending, when you finally release your grip and allow dissolution to happen, something extraordinary occurs. The defended heart breaks open, and in that breaking open, you do not become more vulnerable to loss. Paradoxically, you become less vulnerable, because you have stopped believing you can be destroyed by loss. You have stopped believing that your worth depends on holding on to anything. The dissolution shows you. You survived every loss so far. Every person who left, you survived. Every dream that died, you survived. Every version of yourself that dissolved, the deeper you that witnessed that dissolution remained untouched. This recognition is liberating, because it reveals that you cannot actually be destroyed. What you can be is transformed. But transformation is not destruction. It is rebirth. Impermanence is not a curse. Impermanence is a gift. Because impermanence means nothing is fixed, nothing is frozen, everything is fluid. And in that fluidity, you have infinite possibility for transformation. If your suffering were permanent, there would be no hope. But because impermanence is the nature of reality, your suffering is not permanent either. It will dissolve. It will transform. It will give way to something else. If your identity were fixed, you would be trapped forever in whatever conditioning created that identity. But because impermanence is the nature of reality, you can shed identities. You can dissolve the patterns that bind you. You can become someone new. If your circumstances were permanent, you would be stuck forever in whatever situation you find yourself. But because impermanence is the nature of reality, your circumstances are constantly shifting. New possibilities are constantly emerging. This is why the wisest people do not cling to joy. They do not cling to success. They do not cling to anything, because they understand everything that arrives will depart. Everything that is built will crumble. Everything that is experienced will fade. And because they understand this, they can be fully present with what is here now. They can fully appreciate what they have without grasping. They can fully love what they love without fear. There is a specific kind of dissolution that is necessary for genuine transformation. It is not the dissolution that happens to you through loss or trauma, though loss and trauma can trigger it. It is the voluntary dissolution, the conscious allowing of your constructed self to fall away. This happens through practices like meditation, through relationships where you are truly seen, through encounters with beauty or vastness that make the personal self seem small, through genuine spiritual work. In these moments, you voluntarily release your grip on who you believe yourself to be. You stop defending your image. You stop maintaining your story. You allow yourself to dissolve. And in that voluntary dissolution, you discover something. The ground is solid beneath you, even when there is nothing to hold on to. You are not destroyed by the dissolution. You are completed by it. Because what was fragmented becomes whole. The parts of yourself that you had separated from, the parts you rejected, denied, hid, they come back together. Not as a reconstruction, but as an integration. This is what wholeness actually is. Not the completion of a story, but the integration of all the parts of yourself that were fragmented by the story. So, what actually persists when everything dissolves? Not your name, not your reputation, not your accomplishments, not your relationships as you currently experience them, not your body, not your thoughts, not your emotions. What persists is awareness itself, the consciousness that knows, the presence that witnesses, the awareness that is aware of all arising and passing away. Your essence, not as a thing, but as a quality. The unique way that universal consciousness expresses itself through your particular form. The particular flavor of presence that is uniquely you. What you have truly learned, not intellectually, but embodied. The wisdom that has become part of your being through direct experience. The understanding that has integrated into your consciousness. What you have truly loved, not the person, because people change and die, but the love itself, the capacity to love, the way that loving someone transformed you. That transformation persists. The connections you have made, not as possessions, but as ripples. You have touched other consciousnesses. You have been touched by them. Those interactions exist in the fabric of reality. They cannot be undone. Everything else is temporary. But these things, awareness, essence, integrated wisdom, the capacity to love, the ripples you have created, these persist. These are what you actually are. When you truly understand dissolution, not intellectually, but in your being, a profound peace emerges. Because you stop fighting reality. You stop trying to make permanent what is inherently impermanent. You stop clinging to what is designed to flow. Instead, you become available to what is actually here now. You become present with what is actually in front of you, knowing that it will not last, and therefore appreciating it completely. You love people knowing they will eventually leave or die, and because of that knowledge, you love them more fully. You pursue your dreams knowing they may not materialize, and because of that knowledge, you engage in the pursuit more authentically. You build things knowing they will crumble, and because of that knowledge, you build with care and integrity. This is not resignation. This is the deepest form of engagement, because you are no longer motivated by fear. Fear of loss, fear of impermanence, fear of dissolution. You are motivated by presence, by the appreciation of what is, by the love of what is arising in this moment. And paradoxically, this leads to a kind of permanence, not the frozen permanence of things that do not change, but the dynamic permanence of presence itself. The permanence of being fully alive and aware in each moment. If you have understood anything in this teaching, understand this. You will dissolve. Everything you are will eventually dissolve. And that is not a tragedy. That is the design of existence. But what you actually are, what remains when everything dissolves, is indestructible. It is eternal. It is untouched by time and change and loss. And when you know this not just intellectually, but in your being, when you have felt the dissolution and discovered the permanence within it, you are free. Free to love without clinging, free to build without grasping, free to live without defending, free to be fully present with what is, knowing that nothing lasts, and therefore everything matters. Like this video if you recognize the truth of dissolution in your own life. Subscribe to the Path of Sufism for teachings on impermanence, transformation, and the eternal within the temporal. Comment: what have you allowed to dissolve in your life? What persisted? Thank you for being here.